What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Buckeye-Film-Breakdown. As always, I'm Jeremy. One side of the screen, we got Coach Slate. Other side, we got Jake. Tap in BuckeyeFilmBreakdown.com to catch up on anything you might have missed from last week. We wanted to hop on here, do a little portal update, and these guys want to talk some actual ball too. We want to talk some offensive stuff. So I think we're going to hop right into that. We'll talk X's and O's stuff first. And we want to talk about how can the Ohio State offense reach kind of Death Star mode, I guess you would say, with Julian Sayin as the quarterback. We've talked about it a lot after the Miami game, especially, Julian Sayin being very hesitant to use his feet. And, Jake is our X's and O's guy, especially when it comes to all things offense. So how do we step it up, Jake?
Well, I think the framework is obviously they're going to hire an offensive coordinator, right? We know that. I think I'm an idiot, known idiot. So on the outside looking in, here's the stuff that concerns me going into next year. Part one is tempo. They clearly believe they're and I'm not even really here, guys, to say they're wrong, because if they just score against Indiana, they probably beat them. Right? Just capitalize on your opportunities inside the red zone. And I don't want to make YouTube mad and yell at us, but I think it's fair to say that they had some really great drives that they just didn't finish and they missed a field goal, right? So if they just do that, they're the one seed. They get Alabama, and then they get a very flawed Oregon team, and maybe we're talking still about Ohio State football going into the national championship, and then they meet Miami, right? That's all very possible. But the Miami game was the same thing, where they had what did they have, 3 possessions each second half, or maybe 2? Yeah. It was shallow. So listen, I fully understand that when your defense is as good as that defense has been, it felt to me like Slate and it felt to me like they wanted to lean into defense, long drawn out possessions where they eat the clock, put the pressure on the opposing team to get out of their comfort zone offensively and chase the scoreboard, right? Play very much clean offense. And I get it. Where my concern is now going into next year, in the future, right? This is I can't call it a once in a lifetime Ohio State defense, but it was really good. Good. They're going to put a bunch of guys in the first round, and we're going to be talking about those guys a long time into the NFL. The pass rush, probably the only part that we would agree wasn't as elite as it has been in the past at times, but again, a very good defense. And I understood with the first year quarterback, this is maybe the way to go about it. Let's shorten things. Let's keep it simple on this side. Take advantage of wide receivers, etc. I get it. They have to figure out a way, though, to create more explosives, and they have to figure out a way to pick the tempo up. Now, this is where I get a little conflicted. Obviously, you're chasing, the theory I have, and I know that you probably share it, guys, is you need Jimmys and Joes over X's and O's, right? You can run the perfect tight zone into the correct front, get a guy to the second level. And what we saw, and I like Bo Jackson a lot, and we've talked about it, whether our recap or whether other moments this year, he couldn't make somebody miss in space. And that's where 10-yard runs, 7-yard runs turn into 15, 25, 45, etc. Now, do you believe that he can become, or somebody else on the roster, maybe there's still a transfer portal name to hit, we don't know, can be that guy that creates more explosives in the run game, something they clearly wanted to find more of this year? Perhaps that's out there. Perhaps Bo gets better going into this year. I'm not sure. But when you become very one-dimensional to find explosives, it does start to tighten the way you have to operate. And on top of that, with Julian, who I think we can all agree does some things at the position very well. We are not going to sit here and have a session where we just crap on the kid because he can't do certain specific things. Having said that, in the college game where, unless you're Indiana playing with the rec league men's team at 25, there's a lot of new stuff happening all the time against good teams in big moments. And there's you become overwhelmed at times with what you're seeing. And that's where the young men with really good, I call them play creators within a play, where we run this concept, but if it's not there, you can get to something else. Either that something else is finding the backside dig, or that something else is finding your hot answer immediately, or that something else is running and finding a way to pick up the first down with your legs. My concern for Julian is he didn't do those 3 things very well. He was a very good, and again, this is just philosophical stuff here. I'm not a believer in he's a one-read thrower, because the best in the business, whether it's college, NFL, even high school guys, you'd agree with me, Slate, getting their eyes to the first read, processing out there in cover 2. I know where my cover 2 answer is. Hey, they're in front side quarters. I know where my answer is. That's a good thing. I want those guys to find first read answers because we play on schedule. We play on time. The thing with Julian that is concerning is those 3 other things I just mentioned. When he gets in a bind in the pocket, there's panic. And that's something I don't love it. As a evaluator at the position and someone who played it loosely like a long time ago, you have to be able to remain very calm, and you have to be able to work your eyes into windows downfield without pulling yourself down. Right now, in those big moments at the end of the year, we can agree from the Michigan game performance to the Indiana and Miami, different levels. It's level up. But that's the stuff that they have to do. Like, they're going to see elite D lines at the end of the year next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. Now, the thing for me with this offense is if you're going to have some scenarios where you don't, we're not a high, when the football variance picks up, right? They run the perfect coverage for the thing we're doing, whatever. And we can't overcome those odds very often, and we're going to be a punt team. Let's get more possessions. So first of all, let's find a way to get more possessions. That's something I would be hunting, whether that's tempo and we're running sugar huddle stuff and we got wideouts out and we're talking the O-line and we're at the line and going, whether that's full on signal-based concepts from the sideline, whatever. They cannot live in a 6-7 possession world next year in a full game. Can't do it. You can't operate that way. And I'm not talking about Purdue, no disrespect. I'm talking about the times they play the really good teams, when they travel to Texas to open the year, right? Like, all those moments, they need to get more possessions, that the offense has to be a driving factor, because this defense is going to be young. It's going to be new faces. They're not going to be as good. So the pressure is going to be on the offense to find ways to produce, right? So that's my first thing. Like, if you're asking, how does this offense become better next year? I'm just going to give you my concerns, because I think at this point, January 11th, we don't have the answer yet. So it comes down to tempo. How do they create more explosives in the run game? Because there were times where there were explosives to be found, but they have to create those as players. And then the quarterback situation. Does Julian find a way to become a Carson Beck level runner? Not by any means a burner, but hey, I'm stepping up into the pocket more often, more comfortably. And instead of taking a 3rd and 13 situation, I'm making it a 3rd and 4 because I stepped up and it's a 1-yard loss, or I snuck through for 2 yards. And it's so much more manageable, because the sacks he was taking at the end of the year were drive killers, just drive killing varieties. So that's the stuff where I'm like, I'm slightly eyebrow raised about the quarterback position, because Julian has done a very nice baseline of some things very well. But if he does not improve in speed of processing against chaos, and if he doesn't improve in creating plays when something's not there, you do ask yourself, what's the ceiling of our offense in that scenario? And you start to look at Tavian, who might be on the bench, who's a very talented play extender, more athletic kid, and ask yourself if that's something we should be investing in. It's crazy to say that you should do that when a kid went to the Heisman ceremony this last year. But at the same time, there are history-based examples of really good college quarterbacks that teams were afraid to move to the next guy that was sitting there, who might be a bit more equipped to take and create possessions, create first downs. And I'm not saying I have any inside information on Tavian being able to do that. I'm not saying there's any quarterback competition. I'm just asking questions. And I think that's a fair thing to ask when you sit here and say, you're losing Carnell Tate, you're losing a lot of production. How do we continue to make it not Jeremiah or bust out here? We have to be able to create when something isn't there, because there are just going to be times where the defense gets paid too, and they take things away. So that's the question I'm asking, because if Julian can get better at reading out the weakness in a blitz and darting it up, or he gets better at just kind of stepping up comfortably, calmly, taking off and creating simple yards, you can win that way. You can be fine. What you cannot do is take back-breaking sacks and have, oh boy, they're bringing 4 off my right side. I'm a little panicked. I missed the deep post hanging out there for me to throw, because he's not really doing enough. There was a throw, I think, in the Minnesota game where he stared down the gun barrel and made a really good downfield throw, but there was not enough of that this year. So that's what I'm like exit interviewing Julian saying on and saying, hey, how do we get here? Let's talk about it. How do we get there? That's my thought on the offense. Create more possessions, because they have to live in a world where they play quicker. And I don't even know that the schematic stuff is as big an issue. I didn't have any real problem with that. More so, how do we get the quarterback to find these answers? Because we got to find them.
And I personally think, you know, the one thing that I think Buckeye fans have to remember is that Julian was a freshman. I mean, this
100%.
was his first year starting. Like, he was going to make freshman mistakes. I think he was so far ahead of schedule that, you know, we came out. Nobody was expecting us to be 12-0. I don't care what anybody says. Nobody was expecting us to have the season that we had. And nobody was expecting Julian to end up being a Heisman finalist. Like, the year that he had was not something that Buckeye fans, myself, Jeremy, we talked about this. Nobody was expecting him to end up in New York. And so he was definitely ahead of schedule. I do believe he has that capability to do all of those things. For him to be mature enough after the final game against Miami to recognize, like, hey, there were situations where I should have stepped up and ran and taken what the defense gave me. To me, that shows maturity, that shows growth. The other thing too is there were a few times this season where he showed that he would do that. There was a big third down situation in the Texas game where he knew we had to extend the drive and go get the first down, and he went out and did it with his legs. There was a huge situation in the Michigan game where he did that as well. Ryan Day is chasing him down the sideline. He knows he has to keep the drive. Yeah, I know. He's got to extend the drive, and he goes out and does it. And
I
so,
would
like,
be very zoomed in on CJ Stroud tape, because CJ is the prototype for him. Because CJ was a rip you apart processor, a anticipatory thrower, and we got mad at him when he wouldn't run more. And then he finally did in that Georgia game, and you're like, all right, man, this is this guy's ridiculous. If he's doing this, so that's the spot that I think, you know, your hope. If you're asking as an Ohio State fan, okay, what's the end product of Julian saying here?
Yeah,
that's what you're hoping for.
Yeah, and another, to me, another good example, and it's crazy to think about, but when it comes to being able to run and not being that elite athlete, because CJ is a very good athlete.
Yes,
but you look at what Penn State was able to do with Drew Aller. Drew Aller was not the greatest athlete, but he understood when to use his legs. Like, he did make some bonehead decisions, but there were times where, hey, I'm not going to be able to process all of this information. I'm just going to go get what I can get with my legs. And he became this running threat with his legs. And so that's one thing that I do think, as he continues to develop, and he does see that I do have Tavian in this room, I do have all these other studs that they still are bringing in, and I do still have Coach Day as my head coach and Coach Fessler coaching me up. I am going to get developed. But the fact that he was able to sit in front of the media and take those questions, those tough questions, and answer them maturely, like, to me, that let me know that he is going to be able to take those next steps. I think that's a hard thing to do. We've seen quarterbacks in the past say certain things that, you know, led us to believe that they weren't going to be able to take those next steps. And so I truly think that he is going to be able to. It's frustrating to see a guy like Carson Beck, who is in his 6th year, you know, make those championship type plays on 3rd and 13. He's able to go get that first down, right? Now they're playing for a national championship. You wish the 19 or 20-year-old Julian Sayin was able to do that. But at the same time, it's going to be a part of his development. And so that is a huge question. And he better be able to figure it out, because Buckeye Nation is they're just going to go after him like no other, man.
And it's like, I think what happened is when, and I don't mean to be callous, but like, when he was uncertain, he looked frightened.
Absolutely.
He looked frightened. And when defenses notice that and sense that, and if we get near him, he's going to start jittery and panicky. You know what defenses hate is calm, level-headed assassins. Like, we're around this guy, we can't get him off his spot. We can't seem to rattle him from getting these throws downfield and seams. And I thought Shambles did a pretty good job of that for Ole Miss. Now, again, a much older guy, but that's where you're watching, like, how did that guy do that's where Ohio State fans will be like, man, we're missing some of those elements from this. And that's fair. That's something Julian's never going to have that, but he's got to figure out his version of play breakdown solution. That's a huge part of quarterback play, something I evaluate for guys coming into the league. When it's not there, man, how do you operate when it's 1 and 2, the front side's gone, and it's not that. Are you able to create a play? Are you able to find a solution with some speed to your process? That's the stuff that he's got to get better at, and it'll be a crucial year for him to do it next year. And if, like we said, if he doesn't, and it's still similar stuff, and you do see a natural continuation of skill development from Tavian, you will start to hear rumblings, and nobody wants that. No one wants anyone to be uncomfortable, but it's at times, do you think Georgia wishes they went back and took Jake Fromm out of things and let Justin Fields play?
Exactly.
Do you think, you know what I mean? Is there any regret on Jalen Hurts being pulled for Tua back in the day? You just, those are decisions. Yeah. Julian's goal is to never make them make that decision. He should never let them do it. So let's hope that that's the result.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. So you guys have prompted a question. It's actually a really good leadway into transfer portal stuff. Say Julian plateaus next year and we don't see that development that we anticipate we're going to see. Do you see Ohio State start to adapt the strategy that it seems they're adapting in other places and essentially start taking mid-grade high school guys and just playing the portal game a la Miami every year for a quarterback?
So go ahead.
I think it puts you in a position where you have to look at the development of Tavian, number one. But you also have to bring somebody in to compete with Tavian as well. Like, that is just the way that it is. You saw that with Will Howard last year, and you're going to see if they feel like, Julian may not be where he needs to be after next year, and we don't have the year that we think we should have. They're going to have to make a decision. They're going to look at the development of Tavian, and they're going to bring somebody in, or they will have to bring somebody in the portal. And that will be the new norm, because you're going to look at somebody that's probably going to leave if you bring somebody in the portal. Yeah. And so, that's just a world that you're going to have to really start to look at living in if that is what they decide to do. And so that's just the way that it is. Obviously, teams are finding so much success. You look at the championship game right now, like, you got 2 portal quarterbacks who are extremely veteran, and it's got a ton of experience. And so I think it would be, a tough spot to be in for Coach Day, but I think if that does happen, they have no choice but to do it.
Yeah, they're a couple years away. That I think, I guess, like you said, Slade, if Tavian doesn't develop and you don't see things from him that make you feel like, Tavian's got to make Julian uncomfortable next year. That's his goal. Yeah. So if that's not happening and you leave next year, maybe Julian has a great year, goes to the league, you do start to say, because, you're bringing in Faye, and I think the next class has Edmonds or something like that right now. Yep. Who knows, it's too early. But, you don't live in that world until you have to. So here's something else I want to throw you guys. This could sound really ignorant, or it could be in 5 years we're ahead of the curve. Do you ever see a sort of minor league system developing here where, say for Tavian, look, man, my boy Joe Moorhead at Akron, I'm going to send you there for the first year so you're playing. But when Julian's done, after a year, we got this money waiting on you, ready to go, or whatever. I think it's interesting. It's obviously the tie-in to how it fiscally works out, and the trust is difficult to ever know. But as a youngster, I think the thing I'm interested in with quarterback play and where it's going, and that's just, obviously it's tricky to develop a system where that's in place and makes sense, because so many variables could change in what I just said. But I don't know that I would want to go somewhere that I'm just going to sit. If I could go to Houston and start and then make myself really marketable in 2 years to go somewhere big, I just am the pathway of quarterbacks, not Jared Curtis, right? Or those types. What's that pathway look like that's best for them to get because all it takes is Ohio State when Tavian's up, and maybe Tavian's fine and has good moments in practice, and being like, hey man, there's, I don't know who it is. Maybe DJ Lagway has a great year and wants to go to Ohio State from Baylor or something. And it's don't you guys kind of wonder about that? What's best for the development? These kids sitting 2 years at Ohio State or playing 2 years at, who's the Maryland quarterback? His name is escaping me. Washington, is that his last name? Great freshman year. But those guys, I should go somewhere I know I can play early, and then have like I'll just be so much better prepared to play somewhere. I don't know. I'm singing out loud. I just find that whole thing really interesting.
That's something that Jeremy and I talked about on previous episode, and I don't even know if we were on air when we were talking about that, but I think you're going to see these MAC level, Sun Belt level, lower level schools. They're going to have to start embracing, not just at the quarterback position, but at all positions, this model that you come here, we can develop you to go to the Power Four.
That's
Because
it, right?
that is something that I think they're going to have to start embracing. It's funny that you bring that up. I got a text message yesterday from one of my former players, and he said, "Coach Slade, this is like the weirdest recruiting strategy. Like, should I entertain this?" And it was from an HBCU. Now, HBCUs are in unique situations because they're trying to get guys just to come to these schools, and it's not like a big name HBCU, but they just want to get the best players, athletes they can get. And he said, "Hey, man, I'm just going to be honest with you. You come here for 2 years, I can develop you, and I feel like I can get you to a Division I school."
Yeah.
And my former player texted me and he said, "Coach Slate, like, wouldn't he want me to stay there for 4 years?" And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, yeah, ideally, but he wants you to come there." And so like he knows your goal is to go play Division I football. He's trying to show you like, I can help you get there. If you come here, I can develop you. And it's like some schools are already embracing that model and that mindset. And so I just think that, a lot of these guys, the end goal is to end up at Ohio State. Okay, well, come to Akron and I could develop you for these 2 years, and then boom, you're going to be an Ohio State level player.
With where this started 2 years ago, 3, how many years has it been they're doing this now? 3, 2, to where we are now, where like Utah is signing out their athletics department to be sold out to investment firms. Is it crazy to think that like Toledo, Akron, and Bowling Green have formed this partnership with Ohio State to funnel their guys? Because think about how advantageous it would be for those guys. Like Toledo's getting 4-star guys for a year. They got a year worth of these really good guys that are out there playing. I'm just thinking out loud. I don't think it's as crazy as it sounds, because
it's really
the last
not.
thing these guys want to do is sit on the bench now. There's more emphasis than ever about playing, and there's only so many spots to play. And if you're Ohio State sitting in your boardroom and being like, guys, all of our depth is leaving, well, why don't we just pay them to go here for a year or two and then come here when they're ready to be on the field? Because how many times can, like, hypothetically speaking, again, next year Ohio State loses to Texas Tech, right? They go watch Brendan Sorsby outplay Julian Sand, and then the next year they lose to Dylan Raiola. How many years can Ohio State's upper management watch veteran quarterbacks beat them in big games without starting to say, "Hey, Ryan, you need to go find one"? Like, that's going to start getting hot.
Yeah,
absolutely. Clinton Portis, running backs coach at Delaware State, he was in a Twitter conversation because he pushed both of his running backs to leave. And he said, if my guys aren't moving up, I'm not doing my job, essentially. Like, he has already embraced that strategy, and it's coming. I mean, I don't know that it would ever be like legally binding, but I think the schools who embrace, hey, we know you're going to be here for a year or two and then you're out, are going to start getting the higher rated high school kids, because you're starting to see a shift in mentality when it comes to roster management. And we kind of got a firsthand peek at it with the Buckeyes this weekend. Fahim Delane enters the portal, probably, in my eyes, optically, the biggest loss so far. But then in true Ohio State fashion, you level up and you get the commitment of Earl Little, who starts fitting that mold of grown man. I know Slate's watched some Earl Little tape, but he fits what we've talked about. The shift is happening.
Yeah, man. I'm watching it right now. Yeah, he's a grown man. I think you've heard Coach Signetti say it. You've heard, a lot of coaches that are going toward this model of, production over potential. And it is a philosophy change that I think Ohio State is kind of leaning into. They want to pay for, and this is just me assuming, but I believe that they want to pay for people who have actually produced on the field, and they want to make sure that they are rewarding that, just like they want to make sure that they're retaining guys that have done stuff at Ohio State, right? They want to pay Kenyatta Jackson, right? They want to pay Peyton Pierce. They want to pay Jermaine Matthews. They want to pay Jalen McClain. They want to make sure those guys are the ones that are getting the raises because they've produced on the field. When somebody comes to them who hasn't really done much, maybe on special teams they were great, but they haven't really done much outside of that, and they ask for a raise, that raises some eyebrows as to why you're really here in some instances. And so if that's the case, you may leave to go get more money, but I can go get this guy, Earl Little Jr., who is a proven player, all ACC player who's going to be turning 23 years old. He has done it at a high level. He's done it against some big time opponents like Alabama and Miami, and I can go get him and play right now and be game ready as soon as he gets on campus. And so Earl Little Jr., I'm going to have some stuff on the opening drive for about him tomorrow. He is a player. He fits exactly what the Buckeyes need in the scheme. He does a lot of similar things as to what Caleb Downs and Jalen McClain both did in our defense this past year. Coach Patricia will be able to do a lot of different things with him. He can play in the nickel. He could play the post safety. He can play anywhere. He could just do a lot. He's a very physical guy. He will run downhill and smack you. I mean, there's just a lot of things that he can do. So it's a guy I'm really excited about. I think he could provide a lot of veteran leadership to this defense. It's one thing that I love about seeing him on defense right now on this tape. He communicates so well. And that's one of the things I love seeing. And so I'll dive a little bit deeper into it in our opening drive, but he's a good player, and I think the Buckeyes got a pretty good player from Florida State.
It does feel like a giant shift is happening, man. I don't know. I mean, we obviously, none of us here were alive when some of the shifts of college football happened, when they started doing things with scholarship numbers and various other things. There have been these moments in the world of college football, but Indiana, we're going to look back on this in 20 years, and we're going to talk about the years Indiana changed the scope of college football and I don't know when this happened, guys, because we've seen Indiana be pretty good for 2 years, and then all of a sudden they beat Ohio State, and everyone's like, "Oh, okay, they are pretty. Yes, they are pretty good." And then someone, like, the first time I've seen it, and I'm not saying this is the first person to talk about it, but it was the first I've seen of like, "Oh, they're old. Like, they're very old," and like that theory of like, when you think about it, and I don't know if Signetti and these guys like said something like this, or if it just worked out that way, because a lot of his JMU guys and the portal lends itself to a lot of older players naturally. But like, when you're going up 23, 22 to 24-year-olds against 19, 20, and 21s, your body's not done developing at those ages. And like, you have a physical advantage, a moment, being in the big moments advantage that is real. And I just find that fascinating, that I think we're going to look back on this about older college rosters and older NFL prospects happening more often, because a big part of the NFL's age preferences and guardrails are a lot about guys being 21 in the first round and getting the most out of their first contract before their second contract. And there's a lot of that, but I think there's such a shift going on, because you watch Earl Little and you're like, that dude should go. Like, why is he not going to the league?
I know.
But that's more common. It's going to be more common. But I wanted to ask you, as we get to the end of this one, Slade, about like, Ohio State has been gutted here in a sense of their depth and their mid-tier class. And you talked well there about the upper level getting paid for doing the things they've done. It feels like finding that balance in their mid-tier talent, the guys who are clearly out of high school, well-regarded, but haven't quite had those opportunities. And like, I think there's a lot of panic in the fan base about that right now. And I know, Jeremy, you have a good opinion on this too, but like, you guys can both chime in. I'd love to hear both of your opinion on, should there be panic, and like, concern about how they're navigating this, or do you think that it's going to work itself out in the next, I don't know, the portal will rage on here for another two weeks or so?
I mean, the optics of it suck, I'll be honest, because all you see is 30 guys enter. Now that's counting walk-ons, obviously, and you've only added 6. I think the other piece to this puzzle is you have heard from the guys who we refer to as quote unquote state media, who are saying things that I think the program wants you to hear, have said since December. Ohio State is going to be aggressive in the portal. Well, right now, you're not seeing Ohio State be aggressive in the portal, at least in the public eye. I think that might shift this week. I think you're going to see, I would say, I can comfortably tell you that I think you're going to see 3 additions sooner than later with what's out there smoke wise. And I think they all fill gaps. I think that Ohio State fans obviously are a very fickle fan base. And the fact you don't have a kicker on the roster scares them. It's little things like that. And I will also give the Ohio State fan base credit, because I feel like Ohio State fans are very tuned in. They pay attention. They read a lot. They want success, and they want to know what's going on right now all the time. So I think from the optical standpoint of it, yeah, it sucks. But you look at the Delane for Earl Little situation, and it's a perfect microcosm of what I think you're going to continue to see. I think you're going to see older guys coming in. And the other thing that I've looked at from obviously the decimation side of life is a lot of these guys who are leaving have barely saw the field, and B, you start to look at where a lot of these guys are going, and it makes you wonder how much of this was Ohio State saying we're going to start managing the roster.
Yeah, and I agree with all of that. I think you got to look at a few things when it comes to all of this. I think number one, you've got to look at this past recruiting class. It was a very big class. Okay, 28 kids that we had. If you look at it, there were 14 or 15 what they would consider 3-star players, right? You're looking at I think you're going to see Ohio State really try to go get a few of those big fish, and then fill out those recruiting classes with guys that they feel that they can bring in and develop, that are actually going to stick around for a few years and truly develop into players, right? And so I think that's what they are going to do. And then those big fish, those are going to be guys that they actually rotate in that 2 deep and play. They're going to be those Devin Sanchez's. They're going to be, the Riley Pettijohns. They're going to be those type of guys that are going to actually be in the 2 deep. If you look at the secondary haul that we had this year as freshmen, Jay Timmons is going to play. That he is going to be in the 2 deep from the very beginning, because he is a dog. Blaine Bradford is going to play. They're not going to sit back and watch these guys not play anymore, because they now know we've got to make sure these young guys are getting on the field. Who does that put the onus on? Number one, obviously the kids have to come in and do the work, but now the coaches, they got to develop. Right? They have to be able to go out and develop. So you better believe Coach Day is going to be on these coaches like no other. And so I just think you're going to see a change in the way that they look at these recruiting classes, and you're going to see us go attack the portal a lot harder. You're going to see us have portal classes of 12 to 15 guys every single year, and we're going to go get these grown men. And so now, between the portal and between our regular recruiting classes, it's going to be 30 plus guys every single year. And that's the way it's going to look. I also don't think that we're going to have fully 105 guys on our roster every single year as well. I just don't think that's feasible until they put, I just don't think it's feasible. If Ohio State needs X amount of $1 million to fill out the roster, having 105 scholarship guys is just not a feasible thing to do, in my opinion. I think right now they're at like 81 or 82 guys on their roster. I think it's going to be right around that 90 number consistently, which is okay. And so I just think you're seeing a philosophy change. I think I think people need to understand that. Buckeye fans, like Jeremy said, are really smart. They want to know, they want to be informed. And so that is why they get so impatient at times, why we get so impatient. I am the most positive human being ever when it comes to this stuff, but I also get a little impatient as well. But I also think that these guys get paid a lot of money. Ryan Day doesn't want people putting his address out online so that people can come to his house and make him have to
Yeah.
hire, armed security guards. He doesn't want that. So do you think he's not out there busting his ass to make sure that he gets the right guys in here? He's probably is being, they are probably are being extremely aggressive. But the fact that somebody is going to offer X amount of dollars, it is what it is. Like they cannot outdo some of the numbers that these guys are seeing.
No.
They just can't do it. They just cannot do it. And so I do believe that there is a plan, and maybe that's just me being an optimist. I do believe that they are going to get really good players, i.e., Earl Little, dog. Like they are going to be fine. I do believe they're going to sign a kicker. I do believe that they are going to sign a kicker, believe it or not.
You're going too far, dude. It's too much.
So I think we're going to be okay. The offense is returning dang near everybody. Coach Patricia is going to be fine on defense. We are going to get the guys that we need. And like Jeremy said, with all the smoke and the people that are talking, there will be around 3 or 4 guys that we think in the next week or so that are going to be added, that are going to be huge pieces to the puzzle. So everything will be okay. I know we're all getting gray hair, but it'll be fine.
But is Matt Patricia going to be here? That's the other piece to the puzzle. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, OC hire and DC solution there is to be determined.
Yep.
Absolutely. But I think that'll wind it down for this week or for this episode. Like we said, tap in Buckeye-Film-Breakdown.com. Check out everything you missed from last week. Slate's going to have an opening drive on Earl Little coming up. And as always, we appreciate the love and support.